Okay, we are now live.
So I stopped spinning. So Mr. Gibson, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good, Mr. Smith. I was wondering why you were still spinning.
Oh, I don't know. So let me take a real quick look here. So if you have everybody you need,
I do.
fair enough. I have everybody I need. Time is now 6:03, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. The board members are participating via Zoom meeting. I'd like to welcome those who are participating via Zoom and those watching the board meeting via live streaming. The link to the meeting is on the district webpage under Board of Education. The streaming will run through the end of the meeting. If the board is on break, the screen will fade to black and the sound will be muted. In the event there is a disruption in the audio portion, I will pause the meeting until it is reestablished. I have Mr. Stephen Otero participating remotely. Can you hear me, Mr. Otero?
Yes, I can.
I have Mr. Frank Otero participating. Mr. Frank Otero, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have Mr. Hidon participating via Zoom. Mr. Hidon, can you hear me?
Yes.
And I have Mr. Vickers participating via Zoom. Mr. Vickers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And Mr. Gibson, you can obviously hear me.
Yes, I can.
So I just want to remind everybody, if you're not actively involved in the conversation, to please have your microphones muted. Mr. Gibson, will you please announce the meeting?
I will, Mr. Smith. This meeting has been announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Resolution and is a legally constituted meeting of the Los Lunas Schools Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Frank Otero, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. Brings us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Mr. Gibson, are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Smith, I have no changes or deletions to the agenda this evening.
I would stand for a motion to approve the agenda as presented by Mr. Gibson and the staff.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda as submitted by Mr. Gibson.
I have a motion by Mr. Hidon to approve the agenda as permitted or as submitted by Mr. Gibson and his staff. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I stand for a motion regarding the consent items.
Mr. President.
Mr. Frank Otero.
All right, I move that the board approve the following items as presented by Mr. Gibson and his staff. First item is item number 11, the approval to untable item, approval of purchase professional legal services over 40K threshold, Himes, Petrica, and Fester invoice 43906 through August 31st, 2020, 11,000 operational, tabled 9/22/20. Item number 12, approval to amend untable item to include additional charges per board agenda item number 18, D2. Item number 13, approval of item number 12. Item number 14, approval to untable item, approval of limited professional services contract, Himes, Petrica, and Fester, tabled 9/22/20. Item number 15, approval of item number 14. Item number 18E, approval of general contract, IFB number 2021-002 HR for heavy equipment. Those would be the exceptions. I'm requesting or making the motion that we consent the entire sheet with those particular exceptions.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. I have a motion by Mr. Frank Otero to approve the consent sheet with the exception of item number 11, approval to untable the item, approval of purchase professional legal services over 40K threshold, Himes, Petrarca, and Fester. Invoice number 43906 through August 31st, 2020 out of operational. Item number 12, approval to amend the untabled item to include the additional charges per board agenda item number 18D2, which is listed on this sheet. Item number 13, approval of item number 12. Item number 14, approval to untable the limited professional services contract for Himes, Petrarca, and Fester, tabled on 9/22/20. Item number 15, approval of item number 14, and item number 18E, approval of general contract IFB number 2021-02 HR for heavy equipment. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. David Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to item number 7, I believe. Is this you, Mr. Gibson?
Yes, I would like to introduce to the board Holly Davies, who's the Community Development Regional Manager for Southwest Facebook Data Centers. Holly has a presentation to make to the district. Holly, welcome.
Hi, thank you all. I am so excited to be here this evening. As Mr. Gibson said, my name is Holly Davies, and I'm the Community Development Regional Manager with Facebook, and very privileged to be here as a part of our Los Lunas Data Center community and family. And as you all know, we've been a part of this community since 2016 when we broke ground on our data center in Los Lunas. And we absolutely love this community. We've very much enjoyed our partnership with the Los Lunas Public Schools. And we were very excited to be able to announce this award tonight for $100,000 to help create the STEM Learning Hub and Lending Library that you all have created. And this is going to be where teachers can use STEM equipment to create virtual lessons for remote learning and build makerspace manufacturing areas, and even outfit the lab with Wi-Fi and computers, tablets, robotics kits. And that's just to name a few of the items that we've heard about. At Facebook, we're committed to playing a positive role in this community and investing in the long-term vitality of Los Lunas and its public schools. And this is just a part of that investment. And we're just very happy with this partnership. And we know it's been so hard on everyone during this COVID-19 pandemic. I can only imagine the challenges and tough decisions that everyone across this space has been able or has had to make, really. So we just really appreciate that. And we know that you're doing this all with trying to keep the community and our students and teachers safe. So we really appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing this project in action and hopefully in person someday soon. So with that, I will say thank you, Mr. Gibson, and thank you to the school board. And I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Holly, and we so appreciate it. I also want to thank Susan Chavez, who has been our liaison, working with Holly and with Facebook. You guys have been a great partner. You're right about the difficulties that we all face with remote learning, but we're getting through it. I'm about to make my monthly update on our remote learning through Facebook and a lot of other partnerships. We have great technology. Our kids have been able to be online almost exclusively. We have a couple of dead spots in the community, but we're even dealing with those. So this $100,000 will be well spent and will give us another resource to use in remote learning and when we eventually go back to school in our classrooms. So thank you, Holly, and thank you to Facebook. Much appreciated.
Thank you all.
I also would like to thank you, Holly, for being part of our school board meeting tonight and for your presentation. And as you stated, and as Mr. Gibson reiterated, we live in a time where we're dealing with a lot in our district, and we talk about a lot of difficult times. I mean, our staff is amazing and they're working through this, and we hear about cases all the time and remote learning and the headaches that come along with this, and we're doing a terrific job. But it is so nice to hear positive conversations happen in our board meeting, and this is such a big deal for our community that we thank you, and we appreciate what you're doing for us now, and we hope to do a lot of things with you in the future. Just know that the Los Lunas School District is very grateful to you at Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item number 8, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. As I have been every month, I'm going to give you a brief update on remote learning. Over the past month, actually beginning last week, I've met with student focus groups and faculty focus groups at 2 of the 3 high schools. I met last Wednesday with 2 focus groups of students at Los Lunas High School, and then a focus group of faculty. Yesterday, I did the same with Century High School, and I'm scheduled to do the same tomorrow with Valencia High School. It's been interesting. The one thing I would say without question, our kids want to come back to school. They miss the social environment. They miss being with their teachers. And conversely, the same is true of teachers. Teachers like being with kids. That's why they got into this business. And so I realize that we've had a real spike in New Mexico, and coming back to school doesn't seem to be on our horizon. But what I will say is that everybody's making the best of a difficult situation. Students commented in both schools that our teachers have really adjusted to remote learning. Lessons are more focused. The giving and handing in of assignments through Canvas has gotten better. We still have some issues, but the technical issues have, for the most part, been settled. So I think that I can say pretty much without exception that things are going well at the high school level. However, we have in meeting with the principal and with the faculty at Los Lunas High School, we are considering changing the schedule for second semester and going back to a more conventional schedule. The classes at Los Lunas High School, the core classes, are very large, and students commented that it's really difficult to be in a class, even if we have co-teachers with 100 students online. So we're talking about ways that we can make those kind of adjustments. At Century High School, the classes, of course, are much smaller in our alternate high school. Teachers were concerned about not having the opportunity to meet with kids. We talked some yesterday about grading practices, and they asked my permission, which they really didn't need, to think about how to grade students more effectively around the standards, and rather than try to grade every assignment that students pass in. So we've had some very rich and some very good discussions. I think our faculty at the secondary level is doing what they need to do, and we will make whatever adjustments we need to make. I also meet every other week with the academic coaches for both the elementary and the secondary schools. Those have been very good discussions. We're talking about how to standardize some of our instruction, so we have an instructional model that we're using across the district. But these coaches have been extremely dedicated in making sure that our teachers are teaching the curriculum, that they have the resources that they need, that our technology works well. So given the limitations of remote learning, I think we're doing about as well as we can do. I'm pleased with what I see. We're making adjustments as we need to, and we will continue to do that.
Is that it, Mr. Gibson?
That's it, Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. Board members? No discussion? That will bring us to, thank you, Mr. Gibson. That will bring us to item number 9, discussion item requested by board member Stephen Otero, RADW report.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Thank you for putting this on the agenda. And the reason I brought this up is because just kind of backtrack a little bit. I know there's concerns that nothing was brought up prior to or after the report was received. Although by memory, I know that during an executive session, you instructed all board members to not discuss the report until our state auditor, Mr. Brian Colon, received the report. So there was really no discussion at the time. I know Mr. Gibson asked questions if we had any questions on the report. Personally, I felt that there was no reason to bring up anything until we really had some time to dissect the report and look at it, not just based on one meeting. So after that, I received a phone call from the news bulletin asking if I would comment on the report. And my answer to the news bulletin was, I can't comment on the report because it's until it gets into the hands of the state auditor and it's approved. so I was still keeping to your instructions. I was then told by the reporter, well, it's already been placed on the website. So it was placed on the website, and I never got note of it that it was had been accepted by our state auditor. A lot of questions have come up. Yes, we spent a lot of money on this. In my mind, I still think we spent too much money on this, and I'm the one that asked. Pretty much, I'm the one that pushed for this based on information that I had. You know, there was concern about why we didn't use the Jaramillo firm originally, and based on the documents that Jaramillo provided to us and our EDW, I felt hour for hour and time for time, our EDW would have been the best way to go, and that was my recommendation, and that's what we all voted on. I'm sure that we were all surprised, very surprised and stunned by the amount of money we spent on this report. For the report to say that there was no wrongdoing. All along in visiting with the board members, I had stated that I didn't think there was no illegal activity going on. And I still believe that. I felt that there was unethical and immoral stuff going on in reference to some purchases that were being made. So really, I don't think we as a board have had an opportunity to bring this to our community other than just the report being published in our website. And I felt it was necessary because I've received a bunch of questions and I've received a lot of blame for the expenditures that went through. And I'll be honest with you, I was totally disappointed on the amount we spent. And I apologize to our community for that. But I still believe it was something that had to be done. And I think a lot of good's going to come from it. The reason I'm asking that this be brought out in the open, because I'm getting a lot of questions. You guys wasted your money. Nothing really happened. I had a discussion with a gentleman in my district, and after I explained to him what the whole purpose was, I think he understood. But there was a lot of questions as to what was going on in our district. And by no means am I here to attack any person. By no means am I here to attack any department. I am just here to bring out in the open what our district has done in the past in approving expenditures that are kind of questionable, I should say. I realize that Mr. Gibson really didn't want me to bring this up, and he felt that I was going to blindside people. I'm not going to blindside nobody. Everything that I will bring up to you is backed up with documentation of expenditures and receipts. I'm not going to bring up any hearsay whatsoever, but I feel it's necessary that I bring it up. And I know that that Mr. Otero, Frank Otero, was upset because we spent so much money. I agree with him. I agree with him. We shouldn't have spent so much money, but it also came to a halt because we were spending too much money. So, you know, it would have kept on rolling and rolling and rolling if we had let it happen that way. And so I thought it was best that we need to stop, you know, enough's enough. So I have just items
Carroll?
that I bring up that
Mr.
were,
President?
yes.
Mr. President, excuse me, Mr. Otero. I know this item number 9 is on our agenda, and it's the REW report. It's a real emotional issue right now. From how much we spent, what we found, and what's going on. And I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Otero, but I would like to recommend or even make a motion that we table this, just because some of the things that are going to be discussed are going to take some corrective actions. And it's going to be a little process. We're going to have to get corrective actions on our policies and procedures, different things. So, and I'm not trying to censor you, Mr. Otero, please. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to revisit this and keep revisiting it. I would like to bring it up one time. And I think it's fair to the district, our students, the community, that we bring it up to our new superintendent and let them just address it one time. Let them get up to speed on it. Let them read the report so they know what's going on. We're ready to hire, I mean, we're getting ready to hire a new superintendent. I'd hate for them to have to spend time and energy going back on stuff and figuring out why this administration did it this way, trying to correct it when it should be this other way. So I would like to see one person take control of this. So I apologize for interrupting you. I would like to make a motion to table this so we can, until we get a new superintendent.
Mr. Giron, can I continue now? And I will respect your view. And if I could just finish what I have to say, and I will, I appreciate your comments and your consideration. So the only thing is I want to say I'm good with tabling it. You guys want to table it, that's fine. But when we table it, hopefully I will not be censored to bring up a pictorial presentation to show items and issues that were occurring within our district that weren't reflected on the REDW report. I don't have a problem. If you guys want to table it, let's table it. But it needs to be brought up, and it needs to be brought up to the public of exactly why we went through this process, of exactly why we spent an enormous amount of $40,000 that was probably wasteful to our community. But yet, on the other hand, looking at the other way, it's in the long run, I think it's going to create a good, like you said, some corrective action, and I think it's going to bring some good ideas on how we can improve on how we're handling this situation. So, Mr. Giron, based on your comment, I will hold back on my pictorial presentation. If we get a commitment, then we will bring this up and table it and bring it up in the future. And it seems to me like you want to table and bring it up to when we hire a new superintendent. Is that my understanding?
Yes, it is.
I'm good with it. I just don't want this to be let go. I mean, it's been a few months. We really did not have an opportunity to bring it to our community and let them know why we went through this expenditures. And here again, I had some pushback about trying to give a presentation in this pictorial way, but I've got another way we can do it. But I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to respect your wish, Mr. Giron, and I'll end my conversation at this point in time.
Mr. President,
Mr. Giron.
I move that we table item number 9, discussion with the REW report until we have a new superintendent.
I have a motion by Mr. Giron to table item number 9 until we get a new superintendent. I stand for a second.
Mr. President,
Mr. Giron, or Mr. Vickers.
I don't think it's proper to do any kind of action. This is a discussion item, not an action item. So tabling, that's an action. We can't do action on a discussion item.
What Mr. Giron is suggesting is that we take up this conversation, this discussion item at a later date. Mr. Stephen Otero has agreed to that.
Well, that's between you and the new superintendent to put it on a future agenda. It's not a matter of us voting on it or anything. It's just it will be put on an agenda at a future meeting based on Mr. Stephen Otero's wishes.
If I can interrupt there, Mr. Vickers, that's a good point, and I don't want to put our whole board into some action that shouldn't be. So at this point in time, I'd like to ask that this be removed from this meeting, although I hope that when we do bring it up in the future, as Mr. Vickers stated, that's between the president and the superintendent. I hope that we will respect the fact that our community knows, and this is not brought up in an executive session, that is brought up in an open meeting. So at this point, I'll ask that we remove it.
Mr.
Mr.
Hidon,
President, I will withdraw my motion on tabling this item. And we'll figure out how we can go ahead and tie this into probably our policies and procedures, because a lot of those corrective actions are going to have to be discussed there. So I will withdraw my motion.
thank you, Mr. Hidon. So, Mr. Stephen Otero, if you're requesting that this be talked about later, we'll just remove it off the agenda, item number 9.
But I'd like to be noted on the record that if we do this in a discussion in the future, hopefully it'll be done in an open meeting in the presence of our community. So that's all I got to ask.
And your comments, fine, and your comments will be noted even in the minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, if I might, I'd like to make a couple of comments. First of all, this report is and has been posted on our website since it was released by the State Auditor's Office. So anyone who would like to read the report, it is very clearly, excuse me, there for their review. I'd like to just read one sentence because I don't want to leave this hanging out there. This is one of the observations and conclusions from REDW. As of this date, and that's the date the report was issued, REDW has not observed or found evidence of wrongdoing, misconduct, fraud, waste, or abuse on the part of the Los Lunas schools or its employees. I don't want people in the community thinking that there's some hidden item in this report that indicts anybody in this district for wrongdoing. The report was a almost complete exoneration of the staff in this district. There were recommendations, most of which we have already begun to implement. So I don't want the community to think that we're hiding anything, that this report is not a document that they can access. It's on our website. Anyone who'd like to read it and call and ask me questions, I would be more than happy to explain what the findings were. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Otero,
I know you're getting frustrated. I asked to have it removed, but yet there still chose to be more discussion. So are we going to continue discussing it so I can continue my discussion, or are we going to remove it?
you asked to have it removed. I'm good with removing it.
Okay, so we have no further discussion then.
There will be no more further discussion on item number 9.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, members of the board, can I take about a 2-minute break? I'm having trouble with my audio.
Sure.
Mr. Smith, I'm back when you are. We were having some trouble seeing it on the web, but it looks like I can see it now. Mr. Smith, I'm okay now. We just
Yeah,
had
I'm
some
just
trouble seeing it on the web.
verifying that everybody's still here, and Mr. Gibson, everybody's here?
Sorry about that. I think I can
No,
see it.
no worries.
Yep, I have everybody, Mr. Smith.
All right, item number 10, discussion item requested by board member Stephen Otero, hiring freeze. Mr. Otero. You're muted.
There you go. I'm sorry. So the reason I wanted this to be brought up also as part of a discussion item, and hopefully Mr. Giron will agree, is that I would like to see what plan Mr. Gibson has in place, knowing that we're going to be faced with some budget shortfalls in the near future. Now that the report states that we're down approximately 427 students, I don't know if it's changed. And we see teachers resigning, retiring, or moving on elsewhere, teachers and other staff members. And I haven't heard anything, but I would hope that there with a district that could, and I had the discussion with someone else, I can't remember, and they said, it might even be Mr. Gibson, I don't know, but we can't, there's essential staff, and I understand that. There's essential, if it's a nurse or whatever the case may be. I'm just asking if there's any consideration on kind of like freezing, hiring more staff until we get past this pandemic or issue that we have. And pretty much that's the only reason I want to bring it up, is see what the discussion was.
Thank you, Mr. Otero.
Mr. Smith, would you like me to respond?
I would, actually.
Thank you. So we have on the board in our Human Resources Office a list of all of the positions for which we've had resignations or retirements. It's quite a significant list, and we factored that into our presentation to the board last week about our amended budget. We have not, and nor do we intend to hire for any position that is not essential. I wouldn't call it a hiring freeze, but I would say it's approaching that. We have many positions that we haven't filled that we don't consider to be essential, particularly when we're in this remote learning situation. But we will have some, and we have one right now, which I consider to be essential. We had a recent resignation by our construction supervisor. We are heading into, as you see on tonight's agenda, the development of plans for rebuilding Peralta Elementary School. We have some construction projects ongoing with PSFA through CES, where we're building security entrances and fencing for a number of schools, for 5 schools to be exact. We need somebody in that position. We probably have $20 to $22 million of projects that will be going forward in the next 18 months. We need someone to work with the architect on Peralta. We need someone to oversee the construction projects that are being done through CES at those 5 elementary schools. So that's a position that we will fill. However, there are many others, and I mean many, that we have not considered filling that will remain vacant. We understand the dilemma that we're in. We understand the dilemma across the state. I participate in weekly meetings with superintendents across the state and in bi-weekly meetings with the secretary and his staff. There is a strong push on the part of school boards across the state to have the districts in the state held harmless for enrollment. If the 427 students that we don't have right now were to impact our budget for the 21-22 school year, it would be a huge hit. That said, every district in the state that I know of has lost students. Many more than us. And those would obviously be the larger districts. So I'm constantly looking at what is being proposed in the legislature. Your organization, the School Board Association, is lobbying the legislature for hold harmless legislation. My organization, the superintendent's organization, is doing the same. But I want you to know that we are being extremely judicious in our hiring and will fill only those positions that are essential.
Mr. President,
Mr. Otero.
Mr. Gibson, I'm glad you brought up Mr. Max Chavez. He's a great loss to the district. And I fully support us getting another construction manager on site as soon as possible because it's a requirement by PSCOC and PSFA. So I think that is definitely one that needs to be replaced and should be replaced as soon as possible. So I'm sure that Max is sorry to leave as well because he's a product of our community. And we definitely need to get a construction manager back on track quick to keep going with, like you said, all the designs, visiting with architects, visiting with contractors, even some remodeling is going on. It's very essential. That's a very essential position. So this is great. I'm glad you brought that up, and I fully support that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. So, Mr. Gibson, I just have one comment. So, teachers, we all know how hard they are to come by. Have we lost classroom teachers?
Yes, we have lost some classroom.
About how many have we lost?
That I'd have to, Brian, I know you're on, can you answer that? You're much more familiar with the specifics of the data than I am.
Yeah, across the district and across grade levels, I mean, between elementary and specialty teachers, we're looking at about 12 certified classroom teachers. Now, again, some of those be elementary, some of those are specialty teachers, but right now we have about 12 vacant positions that because of the numbers and in the remote learning environment, we have not filled as of yet. We are in constant conversations with our school sites. When we did talk to them, we did add a teacher because of some high numbers in some of the science classes. So it's a fluid conversation, and it's dependent upon the need as communicated by the schools and enrollment. So we have been very conscious about hiring for staff, and we have been working, as I said, in close communication with our school sites.
Thank you. So we're good with teachers for what how we're instructing at this point.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, because those are always hard to come by. So those are going to be kind of hard to let go. You know, if we our teachers are doing a great job, and I hope that they all just hang on and know that we will in some way make this up to them in some sort of a fashion. But we believe in them. We want them to stick it out with us. So if you don't have to go anywhere for any other particular reason, just stick around with this district, because I promise you we're going to get through this, and we would love to have you remain with us. But I'm glad to know that we're doing what we can in the classrooms. We are filled up there, and as Mr. Stephen Otero said, that we are filling the positions that absolutely are necessary to be filled. So it sounds like we're right on track for doing what we need to do as far as being fiscally responsible with the hiring. So thank you, Mr. Gibson. There's no more discussion on item number 10. We will go to item number 11, approval to untable item. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. Smith, I just put that I want discussion on these. I think it's 5 items, simply because I don't want to be recorded as approving of them. I don't really have any discussion, but I will be voting no on each item. That's it.
Is that for items 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen Otero, you also had comments?
No, I just wanted to show a little bit of love to Mr. Vickers. So I'm good with it too.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. That will bring us to item number 11. Is there any further discussion? I will stand for motion on item number 11, approval to untable the item Approval of purchase professional legal services over 40,000 threshold, Himes, Petrarca, and Fester invoice number 43906 through August 31st, 2020, out of 1,100 operational, tabled on 9/22/20.
I make a motion that we approve item number 11.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 11. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
Was that Mr. Hidon?
Yes.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
No,
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That will bring us to item number 12, approval to amend untabled item to include the additional charges per board agenda item number 18D2, which is professional legal services over $40,000 threshold, Himes, Petrarca, and Fester, the October invoice 44042 out of operational. I will stand for a motion regarding item number 12.
I make a motion, we approve item number 12.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 12. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
no,
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Sorry about that. Yes.
That's okay. Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Almost won that. That brings us to item number 13, approval of item number 12. Ms. Wolf, was item number 12 just to include item number 18D2 into
Yes.
the item number 11?
Yes, sir.
So
You
are
were
we,
moving to amend that, the other one, to
Correct.
include that. So we added that, the whole bill on it for one.
correct? So now item number 13 is to approve the bill. Is that correct? Is that correct, Ms. Wolf?
Yes.
That's correct, Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. So I will stand for a motion on item number 13.
Continue the track. I approve, make a motion to approve 13.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 13. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
no,
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to item number 14, approval to untable the approval of limited professional services contract, Heim, Petrarca, and Fester, tabled on 9/22/20. I'll stand for a motion on item 14.
Make a motion, we approve item number 14.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item number 14. I will stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
no,
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Before I vote, I just would, for the record, when you're done with the vote, I'd like the public to know what these charges are for. So I'm
Sure.
going to vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes 4-1. Mr. Gibson, will you please brief the public on item number 14? This is the money that $5,000 that we set aside for.
This is a $5,000 limited professional services contract to the attorney firm of Himes, Petrarca, and Fester. These funds would be used to complete any unfinished business with the contract to Himes, Petrarca, and Fester.
Are you good with that, Mr. Otero?
Yes, I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank.
you're muted, Mr. Smith.
So I'm confused, Ms. Wolf, on item number 15. We untabled it. Now we're going to approve the purchase order. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll have a motion on item number 15, approval of untabled, to approve the item number 14, the untabled item.
I make a motion to approve item number 15.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item 15. I will stand for a second.
I will second it.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
No,
Mr. Franco Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And regarding those items, it is unfortunate that we had to spend the money that we did on legal services, but we had to defend agendas, decisions, accusations. I mean, it was necessary to do that. And regardless of which law firm we would have used, it would have basically came out to be the same amount of money. So I agree. It's unfortunate that we had to spend that kind of money, but we had to go through that. So that will bring us to item number 18E. Approval of general contract IFB number 2021-02-HR for heavy equipment. This was Mr. Stephen Otero.
Yes, actually, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Hidon unless he would like me to speak on behalf of this one item, because when I went to sign it, Mr. Hidon had signed in for a discussion item. So I don't know if I'll pass it to Mr. Hidon if you like, or I'll discuss it since both of us are on the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. Mr. President, the only question I had on this was, I have no problem with it. The only question I had was making sure we're awarding the contract to someone that had all his documentation, his licenses, insurance, and documentation right. And that the posting that we posted to advertise for that bid reflected to all the work he's going to perform, and making sure the contractor has all his proper documentation for this. And I asked Mr. Gibson that last week during the finance meeting, and I just wanted him to answer that again.
Yes, Mr. Roan,
Okay.
the IFB, the request for bids, there was one bidder. The procurement department verified that bidder has all of the necessary licenses, insurance, and requirements.
That was my only question, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hidon. Mr. Stephen Otero, your name was also on there.
Yes, so Mr. Gibson, I don't know if it'd be too much of a trouble right now. I know that it was stated at the finance meeting that it was advertised in several areas. I'm wondering if there's a possibility, if you have a staff member at this point in time that could possibly read out the advertisement for bid.
I don't think either of the procurement people are on this call.
Okay, well, that said, then during our meeting, finance meeting, as Mr. Hidon asked if everything was in line. So this is a contractor that has done work for us in the past, unlicensed. And to find out that we were told by you or your staff that they don't need a license. So can you explain what type of work is going to be done under or completed under this bid?
I can give you a brief description. I'm not sure I can give you a totally detailed one.
Okay.
This is a contractor that's worked for us before. When we have wood chips to be moved onto a playground and spread, when we have crusher fine, those kinds of things, this is the kind of work that contractor has done. He doesn't do excavation. He doesn't dig. He doesn't do foundation work. He largely uses heavy equipment to move material into places that we need to have it moved.
Okay. So based on your brief description right now, he does have to have a license, and I'll read it off the state website, as well as being on the website of PSI, who is the agency that oversees licensures through the state of New Mexico. So the license that's required for this work that's going to be done, as is called a GS8 license, which is also a requirement a business law license and to have insurances, workman comp, and so on and so forth. So this is exactly how it states on the website, state's website for licensure. Earth moving, excavating, and ditching requires 2 years experience. Performs earthwork using hand or power tools, machines that use air, fluids, or other material under pressure or heavy equipment in such a manner that cutting, filling, excavating, grading, as you said, trenching and backfilling, boring, or any similar excavating activity can be executed. Included is the use of, I'm sure this will never happen around the schools, explosives for such purpose and may be subject to certain restrictions. So based on that, and he does front end loaders, he moves dirt, as you said, crusher fines and so on and so forth. Based on that description right then and there off the state's website, he should possess a GS8 license.
So, Mr. Otero, it's my understanding that you talked to the gentleman who runs the construction industries division and that he told you that this contractor did not need that license. I have that in writing from him. I've communicated with him on the phone. I'm perfectly satisfied that this individual has the required licenses and has fulfilled the requirement of this request for bid.
So based on your comment, Mr. Gibson, not to get in a match with you here, that is totally false. I never discussed this with anybody in the state. I took this off the website. I called to confirm it. I can't tell you who the person I did, and they read it off and they said the same thing. So, I mean, if we need to move forward and approve this, that's fine. You know, he's a local guy. He did plenty of work for us last year. This is also based on the REDW report that we do not hire unlicensed contractors. So, I mean, based on what I read, and it's your understanding, so everybody has the understanding. So I have my understanding, you have your understanding. A clarification would be perfect to find out if, in fact, the work that's going to be performed is and falls under the GS8 license. So I'm willing to move forward with this, but take in mind that I don't think we should put our district in liability if we don't have proper licensed staff. My concern is if somebody gets hurt, a child gets hurt or whatever, to find out that they're moving tractors and all of a sudden he didn't have the proper licensure, the bulk of the responsibility would fall on the district based on our approval. So that's just my what I found on the website. I can share that with all the board members. I've shared it with our president. And if we want to get in the practice of hiring people without license, then let's do it across the board.
Board members, any comments? I'll stand for a motion on item number 18E, approval of general contract IFB number 2021-002 HR for heavy equipment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Eloy Hidon.
I move that we approve general contract IFB number 2021-002-HR for heavy equipment.
I have a motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon to approve item number 18E, general contract IFB number 2021-002 HR for heavy equipment. I'll stand for a second.
Mr. President, I will second that.
I have a second by Mr. D. Vickers. David Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That will bring us to item number 19, announcement of meetings. As allowed by the Open Meeting Act and District Open Meetings Resolution, on occasion, a quorum of board members attend the same function, including those held at school sites, at the district level, as well as sports functions, conferences, workshops, and trainings. Board members will refrain from discussing and or acting on board issues in those settings. In addition, only official meetings are published, and if other meetings are scheduled, they will be announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to announce the following meetings. All meeting locations are dependent on CDC mandates. If needed, the meetings will be held via Zoom. On November 6th, there will be an audit committee meeting at 1:30 in the boardroom or via Zoom. That meeting is by attendance only. It is the exit conference. On November 10th, there is a finance committee meeting at 4 p.m. And on November 17th, there was a regular board meeting at 6 p.m. As again, I'll state the meetings locations are dependent on mandates from the governor. If need be, they will be held via Zoom. That brings us to item number 20, adjournment. I'll stand for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to adjourn. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. D. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Technology Department, for everything that you do to make this possible. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.